SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Are you ready for the 2026 Bass Washington Parish Balloon Festival? It's happening May 29th through the 31st. Follow us on Facebook or visit us at WPBalloonFest.com for a full schedule of all the events happening that weekend, and visit ExploreLouisiana.com to plan your trip today.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this hump day. A gorgeous one out there it is, but it is April, always a delightful time of year here in Mississippi. Bad storms moving across the upper Midwest, and so we talked about this, I think, earlier in the year. It's a La Nina year, right, which indicates that the jet stream stays somewhat north of our position here, kind of drapes across the northern half of the country, and that's the driver of the storms as they come out of the Pacific, and they're just moving right on through. Michigan, Wisconsin, they're set for some rather challenging weather. Beautiful here in central Mississippi. Had a great remote yesterday in Flowood, Mississippi with Holyfield Pest Management launching their new operation in Rankin County there. Great weather for that event. Blessed indeed. Rhino headed up to DeSoto County last night for a little political event at Snowden House, Snowden Grove, and man, it brought back the memories of coaching so many games on the fields at Snowden Grove Park in view from the Snowden House. The DIG PAC hosted this event, well attended, numerous speakers, including Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann. Ag Commissioner Andy Gibson was on hand. And, a bunch of others. Senator Daniel Sparks, who, by the way, said he is a candidate for state auditor in the next cycle. He actually said that. He shared that with us off the air last week when he was here. But last night he said it, so I don't think I'm saying anything that's out of school. Former Representative Nick Bain, I wouldn't be surprised. He also was a speaker. Wouldn't be surprised to see him also announced that he is a candidate for state auditor. Sheriff Tuggle, he spoke. Representative, I may miss some here. I don't have them all listed. There was a bunch of them. Representative Rodney Holder, Dan Eubanks, Jeff Hale, all from the area, spoke. Kimberly Remack, I may miss some. I apologize if I do. All spoke as well. Whitney Lipscomb, who used to be with the Attorney General's office and now, I believe, with the Republican Attorney General, works for that organization. She spoke, was there. The mayor, Darrell Musselwhite of South Haven. Oh, our friend Stephen Scotetti, Rhino, you know him. He is the chair of philosophy and religion at the University of Mississippi. Also is the director of the Declaration of Independence Center for the Study of American Freedom at Ole Miss. We've had him on the program numerous times. He spoke, saw a couple of my friends from Young Americans for Liberty over at Ole Miss, a group I've had the pleasure of speaking to as well. Well attended, had a big crawfish boil, so shout out to Dave Young and John Stevenson with the Dig Pack, and also Mark Bellini. He's North Central Electric marketing manager. They kind of served as the MCs. And
I'm going to say they cooked the crawfish.
Well, I'm not sure who cooked the crawfish. I did see my friend Dave Young over there serving it up, though. And they had it set up pretty nice. It was good, beautiful weather, beautiful venue, of course. And it's crawfish time of year, right? That's what we do. And they had other goodies as well. And there was folks there from the Republican Club of DeSoto County. Just, again, well-attended event. And if I left somebody out that also took to the stage and spoke, I certainly apologize for that. There was a bunch of them. I think 14, 15. I was privileged to speak for a couple of minutes there, and kind of fun. But there was a band. I apologize, I don't recall the name of the band that provided some entertainment there for us. And then just about towards the end of the speaking, I was approached by John Stevenson. He ran for state senate. I don't know if you remember that. I think when there was some redistricting in DeSoto County, remember Mike McClendon, the seat holder for that particular Senate seat? It got redrawn, had to run for his seat again, and John Stevenson was a challenger. But John is heavily involved in this DIG PAC. I can't tell you I remember what that stands for. It's DeSoto Integrity something PAC. I apologize to you, John, for not recalling that from memory, but Rhino's looking it up right now. Good group, though, and appreciate them hosting this event. And so there's a band on the little porch there. It's the old Snowden house, which has a really neat kind of plantation-style one-story home with a nice wraparound porch.
DeSoto Integrity and Government Political Action Committee.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't remember what the G... Of course, that's government, integrity and government. Silly me for not remembering that. But we're down to the last two or three speakers. Representative Rodney Holder was one of those, and then I think wrapped up by the mayor, Darrell Musselwhite of South Haven. And John approaches me, "Hey, Gerard, can you play a couple of songs on the drums?" So they put me to work. No, it was fun. We played Tennessee Whiskey, which is one of the house band tunes, and also played Don't Stop Believing by Journey, of course. John handled the lead vocals, did a fantastic job. A lot of fun, though, being on the stage there. Of course, when you sit down in somebody else's kit, it's kind of configured for them, and the throne was a little lower than I like it, and I couldn't figure out how to adjust it up. But had a lot of fun doing that. Great event. Just wanted to pass that on. You also know, Rhino, that you should hold on to your wallets because them zany legislators are back at it again. They've been summoned back to the Capitol in Jackson. You know what that means, don't you? Per diems. Ding, 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 ding. They're back at it today at 1 o'clock. So, of course, many of them were there from the DeSoto County delegation there, 4 or 5, and they're all set, ready to go. Back at it again today. What are they going to do? Do we know exactly at this point?
I would imagine it would have something to do with the argument taking place on social media between the governor and them.
Yeah, and that involves some of the vetoes, right, that the governor saw fit to exercise that on Monday. That was the last day where, and you know how that works. Once a bill gets on up to the governor, there are 3 possible outcomes. Sign it into law, let it expire on the calendar, take no action, in which case it becomes law, or put the old veto on it. And so what are our laws here, Rhino? 2/3 of both chambers to override a gubernatorial veto? I think that's the same at the federal level as well. And so one of these was a Gulf Coast fund, right? And the governor didn't like the structure there. We talked about that yesterday on the program. And that's one that I think was voted to pass unanimously by both houses. So this will be interesting if we run into a little situation where the legislature is at odds with the governor, and they see fit to override his veto. I don't remember seeing this many vetoes in a long time. Not sure ever, but certainly sine die, kind of wink, wink, and then coming back. Can you remember last time that happened? We're not talking about a special session. That's not what this is. This is just kind of a conditional sine die, I guess, is what we got when that happened, where lawmakers were informed, hey, stay close to your phone. You may be back. And sure enough, they're headed back. They're going to take up some matters. Haven't seen the agenda yet. Don't know what's on it. 1 o'clock today. Of course, today, my least favorite time of the year, day of the year, tax day, April 15th. Here we are. Get out your dang wallets. Pay your tax bills. We got some news on that. Refunds, of course, are up, but many Americans aren't feeling the positive benefits of those refunds. We've got Jimmy Failla joining us at 10:35. He's the host of Fox News Saturday Night with Jimmy Failla and host of Fox Across America. As Rhino bumps us out with, of course, the iconic song by Journey, Don't Stop Believing. Thank you for that, Rhino. Coming right back.
Spring clean.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
The talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
We're rolling. Hit it. Go. Play it.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Chicago, 25 or 6-4, bumping us into this segment. Appreciate that, Rhino. All right, so tell the folks again, we received an extension from the federal government for our tax filing date, and that's at June 8th, I believe, and that's because of the ice storm, and some other states got some relief as well with respect to the filing deadline as a result of other situations. And
Tennessee got one for Winter Storm Fern as well.
Okay. So interesting that the state of Mississippi, however, did not extend the state filing deadline. So the problem is you can't really complete your state tax return without completing your federal tax return. So not sure how beneficial that is. Maybe our legislature should have acted. Do you remember we had this issue back in the COVID era, I think, and we were pushing pretty hard for an extension? Remember that? And getting a little pushback we were from some folks in government. Ultimately, that did happen, though, as it was happening across the country. So the tax calendar has changed just a little bit this year, and that goes for the state of Mississippi. All 82 counties, by the way, for federal tax purposes, your return is not due until June the 8th. Now, if you've done your return and you're scheduled to get a refund, I suspect you'd want to get that in as soon as possible and get the IRS working on that. But you still got to send a return into the state of Mississippi to be in conformance with the filing deadline. You didn't get any relief there. So I don't know how valuable that is. And all that really means is that if you owe money mainly to the IRS, that any penalties and interest that would apply for filing and, more importantly, paying after that date are waived. June 8th is the date that the clock starts ticking, essentially. The Dow down 141 today. Both indexes had a good day yesterday. And the NASDAQ, however, in the green. There is some sentiment on Wall Street that perhaps this old Iranian war is going to come to an end. The president is certainly suggesting that in his remarks on social media, his interviews the last day or two. So we will see.
I mean, the blockade is costing Iran $400 million a day.
Yeah, it's breaking them. And we went through that yesterday. I think it's a brilliant strategy. It's the same way that Reagan essentially broke the USSR because he broke them financially, economically, by just beefing up our military and forcing them to spend even more money that they didn't have, because it turns out in a communist nation that people don't produce very much because it all goes to the collective. And people tend to respond better when they are rewarded for the efforts that they personally invest. That's kind of the way humans are built. They're designed. I think it was the economist Thomas Sowell. I may have said this last week. He's the one that said that the ranchers in Texas and the potato farmers in Idaho, they rise early and they retire late. They toil on the farms. They're willing to put forth that effort to feed the wealthy people steak and potatoes in New York for one reason. It pays well. It pays well. I love that. Oh, man. So, with respect, of course, to tax day, speaking of your money, taxpayers say that there's a lot of stuff going on that are offsetting and consuming those increased refunds. Only 27% of people surveyed recently said that the 2025 tax cuts helped them. A lot of that, of course, is something we pointed out many times on the show because all we did is extend what was already in place. It would be different if we were contrasting Obama-era tax policy to the post-2017 Trump tax cuts, the old Tax Cuts and Jobs Act passed into law in 17. Yeah, huge difference between 16 and 17. Obama, Trump. That was major tax reform. But what happened last year really importantly extended what was already in place with some additions. If you earn tips, if you earn overtime, if you're a senior, you got some benefit there. But that's actually a small part of the population. So most people continued on, status quo, which is a good thing because the alternative would have meant reverting to the Obama era tax policies.
How often the little iPad gets turned around to ask for a tip, it might be 27% of the population.
Well, that's true. Tips. Man, we're tipping everybody these days, aren't we?
Seems like it.
Good grief. And they don't give you a percentage that's very low. They're all double digits, and some got a two-handle. Most of them have a two-handle on them, right? So all these provisions are good. We all embrace them. We support them. But maybe they were overdone a little bit in the promotion of these policies. So there's some people who are saying, yeah, it's kind of like a 50-50 proposition. I got some help, but I'm spending more money on things. Gas, in particular, comes to mind. So the chief tax officer of Jackson Hewitt, Inc., that's a tax prep firm. They have 5,000 locations across the country, said they've been struck by the number of people who didn't realize they could collect new tax breaks. People aren't paying attention, do they?
And that's the blessing and the curse of the lobbied up tax filing people.
That's true.
Because they keep up with it. It's incentivized for them to keep up with it.
Yeah.
Whereas the average Joe is just thinking, well, they take taxes out of my check.
Yeah.
Isn't that enough?
Yeah, that's right. And they don't get that. So
it's also the people that file your taxes that are the main reason you can't just they're the main reason we can't get Congress to go, you know what? We've already got how much they owe. Why don't we send them a bill?
Yeah, so true. Well, but this is the day, and of course the president is touting these tax policies. And the other thing to keep in mind is many of these little sweeteners. The good news is the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the original 2017 Trump tax cuts, permanent. The reason that the Congress had to act last year to extend them is because they passed under the reconciliation process in 2017. And it was not possible to make them permanent to fit all the policies inside the rules for passing legislation under reconciliation. Thus, there were expiration dates on them. And that's why the Congress had to act last year. And the Democrats, they fought tooth and nail to return to the Obama-era tax environment, which would have meant virtually everyone's taxes were going up. You know who's wouldn't? The rich people in the blue states, because they would have been back to no limit on the state and local tax deduction. Remember, the original Tax Cuts and Jobs Act limited that to $10,000, boosted that to $40,000 last year. And that primarily affects those that pay an exorbitant amount of state and local taxes in the blue states: California, Illinois, New Jersey, Connecticut. You can reel them off here. New York. Incredible tax burden at the state and local level. I know we complain about that here, and that's perfectly fine. But, man, you look at us versus those states, no comparison. Of course, you could make that same contrast across the South and in the red states in general. They just have a less onerous tax burden on their citizens. In the meantime, these states are looking at boosting taxes. It ain't enough, which is insanity. But it's the old tax day. Here we are, and people are still concerned about the price of gas and the price of the cost of living in general. And so they're not quite feeling the love from these boosted refunds. But, man, if you're due one, get your return done, even though the IRS has provided an extension to Mississippians. Don't have to file your federal return till June 8th. But don't let the government use your money. If you got a refund due, get that thing done, get it in process, and get your check back. Don't forget the IRS processes electronically filed returns before it does any others. So you'd be top of the list if you do an e-file. It's pretty simple and easy and inexpensive to do. We're going to step aside for a break. Jimmy Failla is coming up next. Stay with us.
From the Seabrook.com.
Okay, is everybody ready?
I'm ready. Ready here.
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
There she stood in the street, smiling from her head to her feet. I said, what is
welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're so pleased to welcome now Jimmy Failla, host of Fox News Saturday Night with Jimmy Failla, and host, of course, of Fox Across America with Jimmy Failla. Jimmy, good to see you, man.
Nice to get the band back together.
Absolutely. So, first thing I got to ask you about is, does it seem like there's just an outsized number of perverts in the Congress versus the rest of the country? What the heck?
Yeah. I never buy a used laptop from anyone in the House of Representatives. That would be the only bit of tech support I've ever given out in my life. If Swalwell's selling, you ain't buying, my man. Holy heck.
It's like Swalwell and Gonzalez said to Anthony Weiner, hold my beer.
hold my cell phone. They said, hold my cell phone, Weiner. I mean, you know what? I'm laughing about this, Gerard, but you think about Gonzalez resigning. Okay, Swalwell resigns. you got to think of the residual effect on the local economy. If you own an hourly rate motel in Washington, D.C., you just lost like 30% of your clientele right there. We've got to start a GoFundMe.
Good grief. Well, why do they think they can stay in office in the case of Gonzalez and Swalwell? But Swalwell running for governor, did he not think this might come out, that you got some opponents that might push to get this in the public square? What are they thinking?
No, they weren't thinking. I mean, that's part of the problem. Swalwell, for all intents and purposes, believed that he was kind of safe. He thought the Democratic Party had his back. And, you know, the way it works in that party is there's a long history of useful idiots. But when they stop being useful, okay, the fact that they were still an idiot comes back to get them. Okay, because they don't bring you down with their stuff when you're a useful idiot. They bring you down with your stuff. Can I give you another example? My governor, former governor Andrew Cuomo, okay?
Yeah.
He had the same rap sheet as Swalwell. He was a guy that was famous for catting around. But during the 2020 election, they wanted to use him to say Trump didn't know what he was doing on COVID and Cuomo was the gold standard. But once that election was over, the Democrats were like, can you believe all these women Cuomo's hitting on? And they got rid of him with his own stuff. So they do this. It's the one thing Democrats get done, okay? They're not going to fix your border. They're not going to lower your crime rate or your groceries, but they are going to open up your email cache and end your career immediately when they're done dealing with you.
Unbelievable. That is a great way to describe it. They're just sort of pawns in the chess match of politics, I guess. And then, we're done with you. They take you off the board in a heartbeat. Just incredible. So, are you watching the possible, while we're talking about Democrats, are you watching the possible field of presidential candidates coming from the Democrat Party? This just seems like we're just wringing out the towel, washing them all up again here.
Yeah, it's sad, man. I feel like this is the political equivalent of being in a bar at 3 a.m. You know, you show up at 8 a.m., you feel like you got some good options. Look at that one over there by the pool table. Look at her over there by the jukebox. But now, at the hour of the night we're at now in this political bar, you're kind of horrified. You're like, I might do it, but I hope nobody sees. You know, that's where we are in the Democrat Party. It's past closing time, the lights are on, and you've got to take one of these hobbits home. Not good, Gerard.
Man, I don't know where it's going, but it just seems like that it's a bunch of retreads that they can't get out there. Of course, Rahm Emanuel, our old friend from the Obama era, he's talking about throwing his old hat in the ring. What do you think about that one?
I mean, he was governor of Chicago, and look how good mayor of Chicago. Look how good they're doing now.
Exactly.
I mean, in his defense, he was a better mayor than anything that came after him. But if we've learned anything from the last couple of months, for real, especially as it pertains to Iran and how horribly Obama mismanaged that situation, do we really need one of his top advisors running the whole entire country? And we know the answer is no. I mean, at this rate, why don't we just hire the guy who trained the captain of the Titanic to steer the ship? You know, what are we doing here?
I mean, it truly is incredible. Did you see the news, Jimmy, that the Pittsburgh Pride organization is having a little trouble raising money to get the old parade in full swing? You know, that's coming up in June, right? Why the shortage of cash this year?
I mean, it's unbelievable that there's a shortage because there's no shortage of letters in the acronym. It's now $!!MM2Q+. It's crazy. As you know, it's not a pride movement. It's a strong email password. You'll never get hacked again. You'll never get hacked if you use that. But, listen, man, people really have outgrown it.
Yeah,
And the people I actually truly probably are being put out the most by this are the people who started the Pride movement. Because they started for acceptance, and now it's turned into, like, climate, Palestine, Two-Spirit people, indigenous Native American people who live in Canada. That has nothing to do with anything. So they just latched on. It's like an all skate.
Well, we played on the show last week video. You probably saw that from one of the members of the Canadian Parliament who was just outraged about the lack of funding for this MMI. I can't even say all the letters. It's like every letter in the alphabet and all the digits all wrapped up into one acronym. You don't even know what it stands for, to your point, anymore.
No, and I love the plus symbol, because the plus symbol means like everyone else, but I think you've already gotten everyone else. MMIW2QQSL underscore. I mean, who else is there? I don't know. Do you remember this? If you went to a roller rink as a kid, they used to do like just the boys, just the girls, okay? If they did that now, just the non-binary cisgender people trapped in one body, just the two-spirit indigenous missing people, the roller rink, the guy running the thing would die before he got to the end of the category.
Well, what about the poor nuns in New York? My gosh, they've been taking care of terminally ill patients for 125 years. And here comes Kathy Hochul with these stupid New York laws. You got to use the proper pronouns for people that are on their deathbed.
Yeah, I mean, this nun is honestly doing it wrong. She should have just moved to California and opened a fake hospice. a lot less red tape. You don't have to deal with all of this. But you got to realize who our governor is. Kathy Hochul was the lieutenant governor under Andrew Cuomo. And she only has this job because she was the one woman in Albany that was too annoying for Andrew Cuomo to hit on. He literally tried to sleep with everybody else. He was like, I can't put up with Hochul. Not the voice, not that vibe. No, thank you. And that's how she survived. But she's terrible. And
a couple of years ago is, if you don't adhere to New York values, get out of here. Go to Florida. Now it's, please come back. Please come back.
I didn't mean it.
Oh, my gosh. And then what about your mayor, Mondami? He's fallen a little short of his goals, but he's bound and determined to open up that New York City-owned grocery store, isn't he?
And you know what's so funny, Gerard? It's hilarious that you say that. I told everybody, on the night he won the mayor's race, the guy who ran on free everything, okay, free bus, free childcare, free groceries, free Willie, okay, on the night he won, he had a cash bar at his victory party. So something tells me if he's charging you, you can't get a free Coors Light. You're not getting a free bus ride. You know
I didn't know. That's awesome. Well, it's the same thing as denouncing the requirements to show an ID when you vote, right, or to prove your citizenship when you register. But we need people to come man the snow shovels. You got to have 14 types of ID for that, credentials, right?
And everyone always says to me, right, they're like, wow, it must be such a great time to be a comedian. It's actually a pain in the butt because there's so much stupid stuff. I don't know which one to choose. You know what I'm saying? We could talk for another hour and a half. There would be 10 things we don't get to. This is the dumbest time there's ever been to be alive, Gerard.
All right, so speaking of which, can you share with us what you're cooking up for the show this week?
Well, here's the deal, okay? This time next week, we're going to be down at the White House because I'm hosting the White House Correspondents' Dinner live from the red carpet. President Trump will be there. It's his first time going in the history of his presidency. So my whole job this week on radio and TV is just not to get myself thrown off the air because next week is the biggest week of my life. So I may have Tom Homan on the radio later because he called me up on my cell phone yesterday and told me he was going to kick my butt because I made a joke about him on TV. And he's like, I saw it. You're going down.
That's awesome.
I might have to, I'm going to have to save my own life tonight on the radio. And then Saturday night, the TV's just a free-for-all. Yeah. I have no idea what's going to happen until Saturday.
That's
we'll
awesome.
Make it work. Yep.
Jimmy, always enjoy having you on. Appreciate it. Love your work, man. Congratulations on the White House Correspondents' Dinner hosting gig, the MC gig. That's a big deal, man. Jimmy,
listen. They only let me in because I dress like a waiter. Okay, and I'm on the red carpet. They have like a magician on the actual dais. I'm just hoping that guy doesn't guess the nuclear codes by accident and get me killed.
That's awesome.
I'll be ready.
Jimmy Failla, host of Fox Across America. Thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Gerard. See you, brother.
You
Take
bet.
care.
Coming right back, folks.
DEA keep...
It's so awesome!
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Come on, let's get on with the show!
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. He just makes me laugh, man. He's awesome. Jimmy Failla. Appreciate him joining us. Really do. Him taking time out of his schedule. That's a big deal. You know he'll do great as the host of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Man, I'll have to tune in. Usually I don't, but I think it'll be worth tuning in just for him. He'll bring some levity to the situation. Of course, the hosts always do, but sometimes it can be a little twisted. It's like, I don't know about that. I don't think he'll do that, honestly. I think he'll do it all in good fun. Man, what happened to the days when you could just, in a nice, kind way, make fun of somebody and wink at them and laugh about it? I think about when I was growing up, the old Johnny Carson shows and Don Rickles, who made a living making fun of other people, including the audience when he would come on. And the guy over here in the second row remember how he used to do that? And I like to go back sometimes on YouTube and watch the old celebrity roasts. The Friars Club, was it called, I think? They're just hilarious, man. Those were fantastic. You can't quit laughing watching those. And they're just literally roasting whomever the celebrity is who's just laughing with them. But it was fun. You could do it. Foster Brooks played the alcoholic. It's nonstop laugh. How did that guy get through that act without not laughing at himself, without laughing at himself? Just so talented.
Same way Tim Conway did on the Carol Burnett Show.
That's true. I catch those every now and then on MeTV.
Break everybody else, and he's just stone-faced.
It's unbelievable.
Eating it up.
So good at it, man.
Voila.
Exactly. Oh, man. Having a little fun with that. The president, by the way, about 4 hours ago, he posted a truth on his Truth Social account. Allow me to read it for you. China is very happy that I am permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. I am doing it for them also and the world. This situation will never happen again. They have agreed not to send weapons to Iran. President Xi will give me a big fat hug when I get there in a few weeks. We are working together smartly and very well. Doesn't that beat fighting? ? But remember, we are very good at fighting. If we have to, far better than anyone else. President Donald J. Trump. That is true. If there's one thing, certainly, Rhino, that has been exposed to the world, it is the unbelievable technology, skill, precision, efficiency, deftness. I could come up with some other adjectives of the United States Armed Forces. Is there any question? Now, think about this. Would this have been possible, talking about these military operations in Venezuela and now in Iran, under a clueless Joe Biden? Would Artemis II have been possible? I've been kind of upset lately that the Democrats are quick to point out, oh, yeah, this got all the traction under Joe Biden. No, and you pointed out, Artemis I, right, was... the
whole program got started in 2017. Who was the president in 2017?
Totally commissioned by the president. And remember when he created the Space Force and everybody laughed about it? Turns out that's probably a pretty good idea because space, as in the old Star Trek intro, space, the final frontier, that is, in fact, that's the new front. It's a new economy. I mean, now we've got business people talking about how to leverage, how to monetize, how to capitalize on space and space travel. The president even said, you've seen this, we want to build nuclear power plants on the moon, knowing that that's the only way to provide power for human life on the moon.
Yeah, that's when you get into kind of the wonky end of math, because you have to look at, it takes a lot of energy to lift a single pound outside the grasp of Earth's gravity. And that's one thing that nuclear power has going against it is its sheer mass.
Yeah.
It requires a lot of mass, a lot of weight to get to the power levels that would be needed for a moon base. And depending on which mathematician's math you follow, you kind of have to get out towards Jupiter as far as exploration before nuclear overtakes the capabilities of solar. That being said, solar works on the moon because it picks up pretty much the same amount of UV from the sun as the Earth does. The calculations are pretty similar. You get out to Mars, and for every 1 kilowatt hour you would be getting with solar on Earth or on the moon, you're getting less than half a kilowatt hour from the sun on Mars. So that's where you start looking at, we need nuclear to go farther out, because the farther out you go, the farther you are from the sun, and solar power is how we've harnessed energy in space up to this point.
The president has been made aware of that. He's been informed, and thus he's instructed numerous U.S. agencies to put together the plans to do that, knowing that for us to maintain our superiority in space, which I do believe is critical to our national security and our economic security, he knows we got to, first and foremost, something the Democrats don't get, got to have power, got to have energy. I love it. I think we're forward-thinking, thinking ahead. I'm super excited about where this may lead. We got Professor Christopher Green after Fox News and SuperTalk News. Hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this Hump Day. We welcome now Professor Christopher Green. He's the Assistant Director of the Chase Center for Civics, Culture, and Society at The Ohio State University. Hey, Professor, always good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Good to see you. Happy to see you.
So, a relatively active Supreme Court term, it feels like, in some critical decisions before the court right now. Some that have been made, some that they're still chewing on, I guess. This is an interesting court, it seems like, that maybe the far-right members of the court, if you could define them as such, are further to the right than customary, and certainly in the history of the court. And the ones on the left seem to be further to the left. And it seems like we have a bigger gap, I guess, between ideologies and philosophies than ever.
Well, it does have that feel. And there's as with political differences in general, we see in the next the last 30, 40 years this widening.
Yeah, it's true.
Just the disappearance of folks. So Mississippi, we used to have people tried to bring back the blue dog Democrats, kind of people on the conservative side of the Democratic Party. Most of those folks have just become Republicans that are just kind of in the mix. So the cleavages do seem a little bit deeper. I think educationally, I think people getting educated in various silos, they tend to radicalize people and get people pushing further. The people who don't go along, they kind of react against everything sometimes and get pushed even further away. But it's an interesting phenomenon, probably related to some of the technological things. But it's not always the best. I think having a good conversation where you're really tackling the same issues and having different perspectives, but really coming up with the strongest arguments and counter arguments at a retail level, instead of just saying, well, I would just burn this whole thing down. All you people have been wrong all the last 5-10 cases. it doesn't add as much to the dispute resolution process of the next case as it might.
Oh, so have any of the decisions handed down thus far, have they been surprising to you?
I guess they haven't been that surprising. We were waiting for so long for the tariffs one, and that finally came down and had a good healthy back and forth. The ones that are coming, there's a number where it seems fairly clear where the bulk of the court is going to go, but exactly how they're going to get there is going to be very interesting. So. The biggest one, I think, by a good bit, is this case on the unitary executive. To what extent can the president fire people? Because most people who looking at kind of little footnotes in the earlier cases, saying they're probably going to have a caveat for the Fed. But it's very interesting when the president clearly wants lower interest rates, and the Fed is like, "Hey, this is just not something we're gonna do." Convincing these guys to resign, depending on exactly how this footnote is written, really may change how the president and Powell interact with the Fed. But some of the recent cases on the birthright citizenship, there's a lot of statutory questions and some of the key concessions about whether you want to overrule a president. So Justice Kavanaugh was saying, well, we could just say you're not asking to overrule Anke Mark, and you're wrong about what it says, and that would just kind of get us through. Yeah. And then next week they say, okay, we do want to overrule Anke Mark. And so there's various ways to kind of kick the can down the road. And a lot of questions about wisdom, about how far do you want to kick it down the road? Is the decision going to be any better if you wait for a year or two? Right. For some of these things where they're really under-examined, I think waiting can be better because scholarship can come out. Sometimes the more scholarship seems to just going to kick more dust in the air, and they might as well just go ahead and go with it. But it is good to see them kind of confronting some basic issues. I think it's always good to recur to first principles. I've been reading, Declaration of Independence 250th, reading all the founders, and some of the state constitutions, they say, frequent recurrence to first principles is part of what makes a healthy republic, and I think it does. It is good to have the Supreme Court kind of explaining how the American experiment is supposed to work and how the American Constitution is supposed to function, as long as they're not kind of constantly relaying the foundations. You've got a house, you've got a patio, you don't want to constantly be relaying the foundations, but you want to understand the foundations. You want to understand what it is we're doing with what is the deal with America, and you want the Supreme Court to be saying things that help Americans do that, in addition to getting it right and resolving disputes, so we're not fighting in the streets. So perhaps one of the most high-profile cases, Professor, is the one related to birthright citizenship. And it's super complicated, in my opinion, because complicated from a legal perspective, I would think, and I'm not a lawyer, I've obviously never argued a case or presided over one, but because it tends to be a bit subjective. And I think that's what the president's arguing is what the intent was, what the strict text of the Constitution and our law is. That's always the dilemma, is it not, for these judges? And it's just interesting to see where this may lie. Some of the comments that came from the justices after the initial arguments made perfect sense, and others kind of left me scratching my head. Wasn't sure what to think. Where do you see this going? Yeah, so for that one, it did seem like kind of the conventional wisdom for a while has been that Trump is probably going to lose, and I think that was confirmed. It seemed Justice Alito, I think, clearly has energy on the president's side, so he's going to make as strong an argument as he can for that side. He's always been fairly transparent. He looks at the historical materials, and he like we all do, we look at historical materials and we would like them to reveal certain things. Sometimes they push back and they just don't. The Constitution is only as well suited to modern conditions as it is, and it's only as good as it is.
Yeah.
So with birthright citizenship, I think changes in transportation technology have made it probably make less sense as a policy matter.
Yeah.
So the fact that you can fly in, so when you got planes, you don't have to devote a year, several months of your life to kind of go somewhere, have a baby, come back. And, just the existence of some of the territories where you get birthright citizenship and people from China, it really is kind of stunning. Congress could deal with a lot of this by statute. So it's a little, given everything Congress doesn't deal with, it's not that surprising they don't deal with it. But you would think it would be something we would be concerned about, not having tens of thousands of U.S. citizens growing up in China.
Yeah.
So there's questions about technology over time. There's questions about kind of general categories and particulars. So in birthright citizenship, you've got children of ambassadors, you've got people behind an invading army, and you've got the Native American tribes. Everybody says those three categories don't count as subject to the jurisdiction.
Yeah.
And a lot of what they were doing, they were pretty open about saying, well, we got these three categories. Is this verbal formulation a shorthand for everything else? Because you find people in 1866 saying, like, well, that means everything else but that. That's a weird verbal formulation. Say everything but that. Is there a general theory? So I think they're really thinking about pretty basic questions about you've got a text and you've got particular applications and trying to understand how the original meaning is binding, but the original applications may or may not be a complete set. I think they're going to have to come out with those applications being, it's hard to imagine them, saying like, oh yeah, everybody thought, that Indian tribes were not subject to the jurisdiction, but it turns out, based on the reading we have to give, they are. That would be strange.
Yeah.
I really like something Justice Kagan said. She said, just at the level high theory, said, given all the stuff you're overruling, how clear would the original meaning have to be? And I think that's a great way of framing it, because you get an agreement you can get, I think, an agreement among more justices than you think. And the original meaning really is what we're after. The question is just how clear it needs to be given the stakes.
So we got a break right here. If you could hang with us, I want to get your thoughts on a case that originated here in Mississippi that's before the Supreme Court, if you can. Professor Christopher Green. All right, we're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge. Huge news. Huge news. Huge.
You need to listen to this.
Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Get your motor running. Head out on the highway. Looking for adventure. And whatever comes our way. Yeah.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We're visiting with Professor Christopher Green from The Ohio State University. So, Professor, what about this case concerning mail-in ballots that came out of Mississippi that is being heard by the Supreme Court? And I guess this gets a little technical into when can a ballot be considered once received by the election authorities. And in Mississippi, of course, if it is a mail-in ballot and it's postmarked by the close of the day on Election Day, if it's received within 5 days after that, it is considered. After that time period, it is not. So it gets into a little technical weeds as to, okay, well, what if it's hand-delivered within that 5 day period and it doesn't have a postmark on it, or I don't know, delivery through some other means besides the United States Postal Service? And I guess that's what's on the Supreme Court's plate at this time.
Oh, yeah. So we had, Solicitor General Scott Stewart was up. He was actually up at the court twice in just a couple of weeks. And this was one they granted the cert petition. So he was like, hey, please rescue us from this Fifth Circuit striking down our statute. And ordinarily, you think if they say they want to hear a case, there's a presumption, usually in terms of just guessing what they're going to do, that they're going to reverse. They're going to disagree with what the lower court said. Here, they really did seem to think, no, the Fifth Circuit view made a lot of sense. And it had to do with, the day of the election was the key. And the idea is you've got, what does that mean? Does that mean you have to just make a choice and then send it by some means? Because there's nothing in the statute that says it has to be mail. Yeah. It has to be, a common carrier. Could it be yourself? Yeah. Right. So one of the hypos was, everybody who has to ballot has to actually fill out the ballot, set it down somewhere, and then they can deliver it themselves. 7 weeks, anytime up to January 3rd. Could that really be what the meaning of the statute was? Yeah. And Scott, Stewart, he's a fantastic lawyer. But the position that he has, he's got a statute, he's got this federal statute. It just doesn't, there aren't a whole lot of stopping points. So pushing back the other side, they said, well, pushing on the Republican committee side, they said, well, if you accept that you can't have late ballots, could you have early ballots? And they did a bunch of not really fancy dancing, but just saying, well, it's a little more complicated. What it means to elect is to make a final decision. So as long as the fact that you make, you have a ballot that is sitting around, and then on election day, well, that ballot that got sent in by mail a month ago is there on that day. That's the moment that's when it happens. So there's a lot of back and forth on that. I don't think it's it wouldn't be the end of the world. Certainly, there would be a lot of states that would get their statutes preempted. A lot of the COVID area, a lot of states adopted it during COVID. Some of them pulled back. We didn't pull back. So it'll be a minor inconvenience, especially for the new election. Will they be able to kind of explain to people? You want to put instructions that are actually going to be true. And if they say, you put this in the mail by election day, but that's not actually true, that would be bad. Yeah. So printing out a bunch of stickers. So there might be a slight uptick in people buying printer paper with stickers on it. So you can print out a few thousand stickers for your absentee ballots and stick them on, saying, "Oh, got to get it to us by election day." And if they, Supreme Court says that by the end of June, it'd be a little bit of haste, but we can make the government be slightly act with a little more alacrity than it usually does.
And Mississippi is one of those states that passed this law allowing these ballots to be counted as long as they're postmarked by Election Day in 2020 as a result of COVID. It was one of the states that passed such law, didn't rescind it, didn't repeal it. After that, it's still on the books. And I guess what's a bit interesting is that we've got Republican Secretary of State Michael Watson, who has announced that he is a candidate for lieutenant governor. He's the defendant in this suit because the Secretary of State's office oversees elections, and the plaintiff is his own party, which is kind of weird, right? So it's the Republican National Committee, the Mississippi Republican Party, a single Mississippi voter, and then, of course, the Libertarian Party. I believe they're all co-plaintiffs, if you will, in this particular lawsuit. That seems a little weird, honestly. And I don't know where the Secretary stands on this. He really hasn't said. I haven't asked him when he's been on the show. Perhaps I should. Don't you find that a bit unusual?
It's a little weird. Yeah, you get this dynamic with the federal government a lot, where somebody will bring a lawsuit and the administration, the current administration, says, we're actually kind of inclined to like that, that position. And then there's a question of So there's a long series of questions of just like, as a matter of professional responsibility, is the executive branch required to give a defense? So if they think, and some of the tricky questions are, they think if it's probably unconstitutional but not clearly unconstitutional.
Yeah.
So this was one of the big questions in the DOMA litigation that led to U.S. versus Windsor in 2013. This lady sued and said, "Hey, I shouldn't have to pay estate tax. I was married to my same-sex partner when she passed away. It's only this federal law that is preventing me from getting that exemption. You're taking my money." And the Obama administration said, "We agree with you. It's unconstitutional for us to keep your money, but we're going to keep the money." And we'll tell the courts, consider these arguments, which are bad, that somebody else is making, and when you are unconvinced by those, then we will give Edie Windsor her money. So it was a fascinating. There's kind of a bunch of underlying questions about same-sex marriage at the time. This is 2013, before Obergefell. But then there's also this question of, when can the federal government lay down in litigation and kind of produce law that they couldn't get through the legislative process. And back when we had Jim Hood handling the defense of a lot of these folks, it was a lot spicier in terms of Mississippi politics, because if he's in charge of this litigation on behalf of the state, well, he can get together with a sympathetic plaintiff, and they can just say, "Hey, let's change this law." And you really wouldn't want Watson to be able to say, because my friends are presenting fairly persuasive arguments, we'll just sort of nullify this law without having it really without having the strongest arguments in its defense be made. So I think it is good to have somebody making arguments. S.G. Stewart is fantastic. He's going to make as strong an argument in defense of the law as he can. And he avoided saying anything too implausible, but was kind of forced to concede that there were certain reductio ad absurdum type things that, if you accept my position, in theory, states could do this other stuff.
Have you seen these reports that Justice Amy Coney Barrett has been seen at pro-choice events, and maybe she's exposing that she's not quite the conservative bona fide that she was thought to be, that she's the old sheep in wolves clothing scenario? Have you seen anything about that? I caught a couple of reports related to that, and I couldn't tell how accurate it was.
I haven't seen anything like that. She is an exceptionally civil person.
Yeah.
So for instance, in the Skermetti case, a bunch of people on the right were like, "Oh my goodness, she said Mr. Strangio," and this was acknowledging the metaphysical point in dispute. The friends of hers that I know, so I'm pretty good. I'm a one-time, very brief acquaintance of the justice.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty good friends of very, very close friends of hers.
Okay.
And they say, she's as solid as they come. She's extremely civil. She's extremely careful about expressing herself. I remember at her confirmation, she had a little ditty with Senator Kennedy from Louisiana about feminist literature that she was into. And like, I'm a fan of Kate Chopin, The Awakening, and there's all kinds of stuff that's maybe not what traditional Roman Catholics tend to like. But she's able to, I think, has a steadiness about her that I'll believe it when I. She's always reticent to decide questions. So I don't think she's running in to decide questions. But I think she has a solidity about her based on everything I've read from her stuff, and just in knowing people who know her.
I got
you. They are confident she's quite solid indeed.
Appreciate you coming on.
But who knows? I mean, people do change.
Appreciate you coming on as always, Professor. Enjoy the conversation. Thank you, man.
Always enjoy it. Take care.
You bet. Coming right back.
From the Seabrook,
Mississippi, Gibert. He keeps his classified documents right where they belong. Inside a Journey record jacket from the 1980s. Gerard Gibert, SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. Little Steely Dan. Get back, Jack. We are back with you again. Appreciate you joining us on the C Spire text line. We were talking about it being tax day, April 15th. Bear in mind that the IRS has announced that it did this not too long ago, that a few states have had their tax filing deadline extended. Mississippi is one of them, all 82 counties. That due to the big-time ice storm that swept through Mississippi a couple of months ago. And you told us there are a couple of other states as well. Tennessee, one as well. What'd you say, Montana?
Yeah, Montana had some severe storms and flooding that they had. And I want to say Hawaii also got one.
Yeah. So does not affect the filing deadline for your state income taxes, however. But it does affect the date, extends that date by which your federal taxes are due. So just be aware of that on the C Spire text line. We had someone that said, I'm retired. I make $40,000 a year. 52% of that is Social Security. I turned 65 in 2025. The federal tax cuts reduced my tax burden to less than 1% of gross. No state tax thanks to Republican government. Yeah, so in the state of Mississippi, of course, retirement income is not subject to state income taxes, and if that represents 52% of your total $48,000 and you filed as an individual, that means you got roughly $23,000, $22,000 of other income. And if it is 401k income, for example, separate pension, any sort of retirement income, you're right, that would not be subject to state income tax. And, of course, when you take that amount of income that is subject to the state income tax, if it happens to be that sort of income, then once you apply the standard deduction in Mississippi and the personal exemption, you're pretty much looking at not having a state income tax liability as well. Of course, once you take those deductions, then it has to be over $10,000 before you start paying anything. So I think it works out to be about $18,000 for an individual. Anything over that, under that I should say, would be not subject to state income tax. But that's good. I appreciate you sharing that. And the 1% of gross, some of that is due to this $6,000 additional standard deduction for seniors whose income, I think the threshold is $150,000 a year, $200,000 joint. You get the additional $6,000 standard deduction for federal tax purposes. So, and the way Social Security benefits are taxed, of course, that's totally different than normal, what's called ordinary income. The first $25,000, totally exempt. If your total income exceeds a certain threshold, then some of that may be subject to income tax, but from Social Security benefits perspective. But it sounds like you're in pretty good shape there. So appreciate again you sharing that. Someone on the C Spire text line, this was earlier in the day, said, am I right in understanding that only the corporate tax cuts are permanent and the personal tax cuts are not? So that was the case with the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. That's why, as we were talking earlier, the Congress had to act because the individual provisions were set to expire in accordance with the law passed in 2017. However, what they were able to do through the reconciliation process, they being the Congress, no Democrats helped out here, so Republicans in Congress were able to make both the corporate, which was already permanent, so no action there, but the personal income tax provisions were made permanent by the 2025 law. One big, beautiful bill act. However, the sweeteners, if you will, the deductibility of tip income, overtime income, deductibility of automobile interest, the additional standard exemption for seniors, the increase in the threshold for state and local tax. All of those are temporary. Those all expire at the end of 28. So that, of course, sets up again for a rather robust debate in the Congress in 2028, knowing that those provisions are set to expire. It will be interesting to see what the makeup and the control during that first term of the new presidency, the first 2 years, I should say, of the new presidency in 2028. We go to the polls of 2028, of course. The new president would take over in 29, and it's just kind of remains to be seen what sort of action will be taken by the Congress, knowing that that's expiring at the end of 2028. That will be in Mr. Trump's final year as president. And again, if the Republicans do not maintain control of the House and Senate, I don't know how the Democrats would treat those provisions. They're fairly popular, even for Democrats. But you know what they're pushing for right now that I think is going to be somewhat of a mental challenge for Republican voters is you've got Democrats pushing for tax reform that would make a lot of people who currently pay income taxes in this country, even under the Trump tax cuts, would be removed from the tax rolls. They are looking at tax structure that would exempt income under a certain level, which would means that even more people would be added to the rolls of those who do not pay federal income taxes. I'm wondering how popular this would be with Republicans that would benefit from that. Republican voters. Would they vote for their personal pocketbooks in that respect, at least from a tax perspective? Or would they understand and consider the bigger picture, because it's not that they're just going to reduce the tax rates and change the tax calculations, if you will, to remove lots of people from the taxpayer rolls. Rather, they would offset that by dramatically increasing taxes on a smaller segment of the higher income earning population. So, I don't know where some Republicans would stand on that. I'm curious. You know, if it means that your tax bill would go down, would you support that, or would you consider the fact that that would be probably not in the best interest of me, my family, my country in the long term, when you're just transferring even more burden of the federal income tax to this small segment of the population? It's that way now. This would exacerbate that much further if Senators Van Hollen and Cory Booker have their way, two Democrats, and Liz Warren and others have bills as well, again, that would reduce taxes on the lower incomes and significantly increase those taxes on the higher incomes. We shall see how true to form folks would be in that respect. Let's see. Gary in the Berg says, what's the facility here? Oh, Baptist Memorial Rehab Hospital in Madison. I had a chance to take a tour of this facility, and it is fantastic. Great asset to the local community, and y'all need to go see it if you haven't already. Our son-in-law is the CEO there and is as bright and hard-working young man as you will ever meet. Appreciate that, Gary. Yeah, it is a fantastic facility, and I live not far from that. I've been through it, and it really is nice. You're right. It is a tremendous asset to have in our community. Jerry in Waynesboro, is CD interest income taxed by the state? Yes, CD interest income, Rhino, would not be considered retirement income. If you are a retired person, it actually doesn't even matter if you're a retired person.
Yeah, I think the only cutoff for it is if it's a exceedingly low interest payment.
Could be.
I think there's like a $10 cutoff. Like if your interest payment's above $10-12, you're getting a $10.99.
Yeah, it'd be a $10.99. Yeah, which is a record of interest income that you would have to include. But for the state of Mississippi, unlike Social Security benefits, 401k withdrawals, pension benefits, all that's considered retirement income. Those are exempt from state income tax. Investment income like CD interest would not be. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Poly up of Mississippi.
Bring the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth studio. We certainly appreciate you joining us today. So here in the state of Mississippi, our tax burden as a percentage of our income is relatively high, but the actual rates themselves are not. And that's an important distinction because I know there's some out there that are saying, yeah, we have the highest tax burden. Well, we do, but I think a lot of people think that means we have the highest tax rates, and we don't. Sales tax in particular, our sales taxes are lower than all the neighboring states, and that's a big reason why they have some other forms of taxes that are lower than we do not. Like, for example, our car tax. Our car tags are higher. I think second highest in the country, but we have one of the lowest sales tax rates in the country. And our sales taxes are clearly lower significantly than the neighboring states, which have lower car tags. Now, I personally like to see the car tag fees go away, the ad valorem taxes on vehicles completely eliminated and replaced with a local option of sales taxes. I believe, as is consistent with conservative principles, that consumption taxes are a more fair way of raising revenue for government than taxing income or taxing property. Taxing property is really disgusting. A lot of people don't like that. I'm with them. But that is something that we should consider. I have collected data from the Department of Revenue showing what the amount of car tax ad valorem tax revenue is per county, and have also analyzed that for the major cities in those counties. And in general, a 1 to 1.5% increase in sales taxes that would be levied as a local option, implemented as a local option by cities and counties, and would thus be kept and retained, all the revenue from that local option locally without it going to the state and then a piece of it being diverted, which is the current model for the 7% base sales tax. And that's how the other neighboring states do it. They all have an additional layer of county or parish in Louisiana and then local sales taxes, and that's how they were able to raise revenue without the need for having super high car tax for that purpose. Just an idea to think about. Converting to a consumption tax, which is voluntary, over the payment of rather exorbitant car tag fees, which people complain about. And the other thing is, it's a big one-time-a-year lump sum. That's a lot harder to deal with, as you know. So, hold on a second here. So I just got a note from a friend, Rhino, who's a CPA that's listening. He said, I thought you mentioned that the ice storm tax relief was just for federal and not for state. He said that the Department of Revenue announces that the state government, State Department of Revenue, will follow the federal date. He just sent me a screenshot of it. And so I believe this may be hot off the press. Is that right, Rhino? Looking at that? Yeah, just announced today. So
maybe they were listening.
Yeah, how about that? Well, it makes sense to align the two. It's silly. It's no value, right? You still got to do it.
In fairness, I didn't see the IRS news until late last night because apparently it got updated yesterday.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. This friend of mine, Bill Felder, here locally at Harper Rains and Knight, local CPA firm, worked with him in some of my board capacities. Bill is a tax guy, really smart. Appreciate that, Bill. Thank you. Because, yeah, we did say that. But if I'm reading this right, Bill, send me a note. Looks like this just got announced, literally, right? Right? It says it's dated April 15th, this press release on the Department of Revenue website. Yeah, maybe they heard us. You do remember, though, we kind of had to push a little bit last time this happened during the COVID era because they were pushing back on, no, we don't want to do that. Like, guys, we have to do our tax return to do the state return. You can't just do your state without the federal. It starts with your federal tax return.
Yeah, it's usually an afterthought. It's like, oh, do you want to check this box and file your state while you're at it?
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, well, this is good news. So, scratch what we said earlier. This happened while we were on the air. You taxpayers in the state of Mississippi getting a little reprieve. So, no rush. You probably already did it. Right? Thanks, DOR, for telling us on the day it's due. I just finished it yesterday, right?
This is only benefiting the worst of the procrastinators.
That's exactly right. Fox News Super Talk News is next, and then the afternoon portion of Middays.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Winter is here again, oh Lord. I've been home in a year or more. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Welcome back, everyone. It is Middays from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Hump Day.
Yeah, I'm seeing now stories all over the media about the IRS extending the deadline for Mississippi residents to file their tax returns. And, of course, now the Department of Revenue has seen fit to extend the date for filing your Mississippi tax returns as well. So that's where we are. The governor did put the veto pen out to work on Monday. One of those bills that he vetoed is a rural health care funding bill. And I believe you read that veto report as well, statement from the governor. And basically, help me out here, Rhino, this bill would have transferred the appropriation authority for these various grants that come from this rural health care fund to the legislature and out of the executive branch from the governor. And the governor just felt like that added a significant amount of additional bureaucracy to the process. It would slow it down and perhaps endanger the state's receipt of those federal monies. And so he didn't like it and sought to veto it. It would have taken effect immediately. It's one of those bills that is different in that it didn't go into effect when the new fiscal year begins, July 1, but rather would be immediate. And he provided some rationale in justification for his veto, he says the imposition of additional priorities, preferences, and state procurement requirements will create an unnecessary layer of bureaucracy that will have the effect of slowing down the process of awarding grant funds and puts such funds at risk. That's what the governor, Tate Reeves, wrote in his veto message. $206 million was the state awarded in rural health transformation program grants. That, I believe, Rhino, was a big piece of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, right? That was kind of the offset to some of the new reforms and new provisions that affected funding of the various healthcare programs at the federal level, such as ACA subsidies. The enhanced subsidies passed under Joe Biden ratcheted up the subsidies that were actually enacted into law under the Affordable Care Act under Barack Obama. And Joe Biden and the Democrats, I think it was a political plan. Hey, we're going to bump those subsidies up, but we're going to put an expiration date on it, which was necessary, again, to pass through reconciliation, knowing they couldn't get any Republican support. And then, of course, forcing the hand of Congress. And in this case, Republicans said, yeah, we're not going to extend the enhanced subsidies. Doesn't mean that we're eliminating these subsidies. That, in fact, would require likely to make that permanent 60 votes in the Senate. Could play with it a little bit through reconciliation, but all it really did is return the subsidies to the Obama era, the way they were before Biden and Democrats increased those subsidies rather substantially. And by far, the dumbest thing, Rhino, they did was shift that subsidy scale up, which is essentially a chart that says, okay, if you make this much money, this is the percentage of your income you would pay in premiums. And the original program of the ACA subsidies passed again under the Affordable Care Act in 2010 when Barack Obama was president. Originally, the way that chart worked, that scale worked, it started out as 2%. Based on your income, if your income was, I believe, 100% to 115 or 20% of the federal poverty level, I don't remember it off the top of my head, but it started at 100%. I know that, and went up a few percentage points. And if your income was in that range, your premiums will be 2% of your income. And Joe Biden and the Democrats shifted all that up so that first range, that first category, was zero. And so we ended up with a bunch of people that had health care coverage unwittingly, unknowingly, because scamming brokers were signing them up knowing they could do it and get money from the federal government to provide insurance to these people that signed up for it, didn't even know it. And the reason they didn't squawk or object or complain is because they never got a bill, because it was a zero. They could have put $10 on it, and people would have been speaking up. What the heck? I didn't sign up for this $10 charge, right? But it was stupid to put a policy in place that essentially provided health insurance to someone with zero premiums. Oh, nobody's going to scam that deal, right? These are the people we have running the place during that time period that couldn't see fit and couldn't understand the risk of that policy. So the Democrats are complaining, of course, about how they're kicking all these people off of health care. We just put it back to the way it was when your god of politics, Barack Obama, signed off on it. Why was it good enough for you from 2010 to 2025 or 2021 when they put the enhancements in? Why was it good for those 11 years? You didn't say a word. And then Biden gets elected. It was all political is why. It was 100% political. knowing that it would cause a political fight and give them some sort of political talking point firepower. They're kicking all these people off of health care. No, we're not. We're putting them back to where it was under Democrat reign. They won't acknowledge or admit that. So this rural health care transformation program was a counter to ending those enhanced subsidies and some of the other reforms to Medicaid. That was the purpose. And so the governor vetoed this bill. Ben from Madison asked this question, and that's why we're going through this. The governor vetoed this bill because he just felt like it would provide, as we just read from his veto message, additional layers of bureaucracy that would just gum up the works and perhaps endanger our share of this federal money that is used to offset the potential loss of patients with coverage through the ACA and offset maybe some that would lose their Medicaid coverage. Thus, they would be uninsured. They would still consume services, mainly in the rural parts of our state. And this fund is available for the governor to issue and award these grants out to these various medical institutions to offset those additional costs, period. And he just thought that this would place too much of an administrative and bureaucratic burden on the program in general. And that's kind of the story. Now, along these lines, just what I was talking about, I received, because I'm on the mailing list today, a Colomb for Senate press release. Scott Colomb, he the Democrat candidate for the United States Senate seat currently held by Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith of Mississippi. And this is the headline, Rhino. What the Hyde-Smith-backed billionaire tax break is costing Mississippi families and communities. And it just goes through all this garbage. But here's one of the things they say with respect to health care. And it's by the numbers. Aren't they clever? And so every bullet point's got a number. Here's one. 110,000. Thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act's gutting of ACA premium subsidies, around 110,000 Mississippians are expected to lose their health coverage entirely. And the 338,000 who keep it are already paying an average of $602 more per year. I don't think those numbers are right. That would indicate that there were 448,000 signed up for coverage from the exchanges. Not the data I've seen indicates that. That sounds like double of what the actual number is. And I don't know the actual number now. I don't think the data is finally in of those who did not re-enroll, because the enrollment period, as you remember, was before Christmas. That's typically when you do that for the coming year. It was estimated to be about 70,000, not 110. But again, I point out, all we did was return it to the Obama-era subsidy structure.
Yeah, but you got to remember, the average Democrat voter has the attention span of a goldfish.
Unbelievable. And you wonder, of the whatever the number is, 70 to 110,000, how many of those have this coverage and don't even know? Because we've now seen reports that say a large percentage of those covered never filed a claim because the brokers scammed them into zero-cost premium coverage. Unbelievable. Coming right back.
America's 250th. Interrupt this program.
Gerard Gibert.
Here we go. This is huge news. Huge news. You need to listen to this.
MidDays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
So I did check it on the break, and it is true that in 2025, 338,000 were signed up in Mississippi on the ACA marketplaces, exchanges, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. And in 2026, according to the latest data, because the open enrollment period, of course, just occurred, and it's reporting that 313,000 signed up. So that's a $25,000 reduction. So where the heck is
25,000 person?
Right. Pardon me. Yeah, people, fewer people enrolled this year, 26 than in 25,000. So where are they getting 110 from? Now I know it's predicted
Same
to
place
be.
they spend all their time. La La Land, Fantasy Land.
Man. Now, it does say, in fairness to this press release from Scott Colomb, are expected to lose. Well, it's not losing, by the way. You're electing not to pay, right? You're not getting kicked off. You can still sign up under the same exact subsidy structure that you were able to sign up on from 2010 to 2021. You're electing not to pay some very small, reasonable premium. And I'll do the math for you. If you're in that first income range, your premiums could be up to, under the original Obamacare subsidies, $400 a year. A year. After the enhanced subsidies, zero. But $400 a year. $400 a year. Is that not a reasonable amount for a person making $20,000 to pay?
Not when you're dumb enough to sincerely believe that health care is a right.
That's part of the problem right there. It's part of the problem. So, no, I submit these people who are not re-enrolling are electing to do so because they don't want to pay the small increase of associated with returning to the Obama-era subsidy structure. It's simple as that. And then you wonder, Rhino, how many of these people actually did get a bill, the ones I was talking about that never got a bill and were signed up, and the government was paying the insurers the subsidies. That's the way it worked. You know, the president talked about that. We want to get away from paying them directly. And that was because they paid zero-cost premiums. Never knew they were signed up. And there are some dead-gum reports that say in that first income category, like 40% of the enrollees never filed a claim. You know why? Because they didn't even know they had. I bet you they went to the doctor and paid the doctor and didn't even know they had insurance. I guarantee you that happened. It turns out wherever there's big government money, there's big scams. Have we not learned that? Has that not been pointed out and exposed in the sunshine, as visible as it possibly could be? And the Democrats look the other way because they know they get political power from it.
And the people that believe like they do get paid.
Unbelievable. That is absolutely true. The government's just turned into a big ATM for fraudsters. That's essentially what's happened. Oh, man. So, of course, the Scott Colomb, he's just blasting. He says 142,000. Cindy Hyde-Smith voted to strip health care coverage from 142,000 Mississippians. No, she didn't vote to strip their health care coverage. So,
unless you're dumb enough to believe that health care is a right.
It's got to be that.
I'm just going to keep repeating it until the Democrats get upset with me calling them dumb. Then maybe they'll take a second of introspection and realize they're dumb.
It's unbelievable. And he goes on to say, oh, she did that so that people making more than $600,000 a year could get a permanent tax cut. And what he's talking about here, I'll explain it because he won't or can't, is that had we not extended, we talked about this earlier, the Trump tax cuts from 2017, had we not extended those, it is true, we would have reverted to the Obama tax environment up to 2016. And yes, that means those at the highest marginal bracket, that's about $600,000 of income, their highest marginal rate would have been 39.6 instead of 37. 37 is what was in place and what got extended. We would have reverted to 39.6. That's what it was in 2016. And that's what they're freaking out about. That's just unbelievable. We gave these huge tax breaks. Oh, you mean we let people keep more of what they rightfully earned? Again, you're laying claim to it like it's your own. That's the Democrat approach on that. That's their position. Oh, that money belongs to us. We'll let you keep some of it if you're good. That's exactly what they're saying here. Goes on to say, Mississippi has the lowest per capita income in the country, and more than half of the 667,000 Mississippians enrolled in Medicaid are children, but most Mississippians will never see a dollar of those cuts. This is just wrong because the reforms in the Medicaid program under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, probably the most significant reform, honestly, really two, but one in particular was imposition of work requirements for the able-bodied coverage group. Doesn't apply in Mississippi. Does this U.S. Senate candidate not know that?
Probably not.
Doesn't apply. You know this doesn't apply. Guess what else doesn't apply? The restrictions on provider taxes. That only applies to states that expanded Medicaid, not Mississippi. We're still collecting provider taxes, just as we ever were. Can't we just be honest about this stuff? They know that people don't know all these goofy details. You and I study all this crap, and we do it so we can keep our people, our audience educated. But politicians abuse that right, the right of being a candidate, I should say. And they get to that level, I just say whatever I want. They'll never check me on it. Nobody knows. They'll yell up, jump up and down and yell and scream, say, yeah, you go get them. But you're not being honest about it. Being truthful should be a requirement. That goes without saying. But if you look at the provisions of the bill...
If being truthful were a requirement, the hall of Congress would be empty.
That's unfortunately true. But if you look at the reforms in Medicaid, the vast majority of those did not affect us. Oh, and this is another reform. You remember this is that prior to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, numerous categories of legal immigrants were eligible to enroll in Medicaid. And all the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that says, you know what, some of you legal immigrants, specifically asylees, parolees, refugees, you're out. Except for, as we've talked about many times, those from Cuba or Haiti. And that all goes back to laws passed during the Boat People episode in the 80s. Would it require 60 votes to undo all that? But, there's talk now about maybe we can go a little deeper and kick them off as well. Good, fine. They're not citizens. I'm cool with that. But how big of an impact is that in Mississippi? Little to none. Well, those are the main reforms in the Medicaid program. And then ending the Biden enhancements as an inducement to states like Mississippi that haven't expanded Medicaid to expand. Well, that's gone too. Okay. Well, none of that's kicking people off. It doesn't apply. Where do they get this from?
Pull it straight from their rear end.
Unbelievable.
And the sad thing is the dumb people that vote for them eat it up, even though it came straight from their rear end.
That's what bothers me more than anything.
There's a particular type of grin they wear when they do that I can't say on the air.
They know it, don't they? They absolutely know it. And then there's a long-term care. This is a minor problem, I believe, in the state of Mississippi. $1 million home equity cap for long-term care eligibility. That's when Medicaid steps in and actually supplements Medicare for those that are under long-term permanent care, our elderly population. And it simply says, you know what, if you got enough personal assets, we're not going to help you as much. That's it. Is that not reasonable and fair?
If you're sane. You
Oh,
can't say that Democrats are sane. Just look at all the insanity they're proponents of.
And there's some little minor changes in some of the reimbursements and so forth. But they're just not being honest about all this stuff. And I don't know.
Either they're being dishonest or they don't have a clue what they're actually saying and they're just regurgitating crap they've been spoon-fed. Either way, they don't deserve your vote.
So that's just unbelievable, though, in my view. And I wish they'd just be honest and upfront and transparent about this kind of stuff instead of always wordsmithing for political gain. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
From the Seabrook.com.
He's with Gerard.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Who draws the crowd and plays so loud, baby? It's the guitar man. Who's gonna steal the show? You know, baby, it's the guitar man. He can make you love, he can make you cry. He will bring you down and he'll get you high.
That's the great David Gates and Bread from Texas. That's my favorite Bread tune there. Guitar Man. On the C Spire text line, the Honorable Bob Deering spearheaded no tax on retirement in Mississippi in the 1980s. He was an old school Dem. Appreciate that. Ben from Madison says, sounds like Lieutenant Governor Hoseman is open to an override. Any word on how the Speaker of the House feels about it, talking about this rural health care bill? I don't. I believe also, Rhino, this bill would have provided for a procurement process to create a state health information exchange as well. That was also included in that. And look, there may be something to that the governor is not particularly crazy about, that he didn't get any attention in his veto message. I didn't see anything specifically related to that. I do know that the Mississippi Hospital Association does have a fairly robust health information exchange up and running now, something that they engaged a third party to create a few years ago. And my understanding is they have several thousand subscribers to that within the state. I think there is a small fee they pay, but they, of course, agree to contribute certain data, and then all that data is compiled and shared and analyzed and parsed. Dashboards sit on top of that. I've seen that. It's pretty useful, honestly. And it's good information for these healthcare institutions to use and just see how they stack up versus others, because I believe it's done in such a way that the identities of the various contributors is not disclosed. So it's just more aggregate type analyzed information. That's why politicians like Hobb get elected. Not sure what they're talking about on the C Spire text line exactly. Related to that, looking at the time frame there in the last segment, I guess. How else do Mississippians get rid of politicians that refuse to retire, says John in Pontotoc. They get appointed and we can't get them out. Republicans ought to be more responsible. John, I think you'd be surprised to know that there are some I've talked to who would fashion themselves as really staunch conservatives that completely oppose term limits, by the way, and don't see any need to or desire or motivation to retire, feeling like that, well, if I did that, then somebody with less experience would come in behind me. I don't subscribe to that.
It feels like that argument breaks down on generational lines.
Yeah, I agree.
Like the older generations are more against term limits. The younger generations are more for term limits.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think a lot of people just get tired of seeing the same old faces, same old names. And that what's true in our state is that most of the time they just ascend the ladder. They spend their career ascending the political ladder. You know, and some of them will even tell you, well, I'm not going to run for this office again, so I'm sort of self-imposing a term limit. Yeah, but you're running for another one. Or how many jump out and then jump back in? Can't stay away from it. We have a lot of that too. Something about that drug of politics, I guess. It's a powerful one. I think that's pretty safe to say. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, so the big news, though, today that we were talking about, since it is tax day, is that, of course, the IRS has extended tax filing day for Mississippi and a few other states due to the big winter storm that knocked us back for a while. But now we have just learned, you probably heard it on our news as well, that the State Department of Revenue has aligned the filing date to be June 8th, consistent with the IRS's filing date for taxpayers inside the state of Mississippi. So I would say that is good news. So I will say, though, that the governor did lash out at Ohio Bryan. He was the senator from District 7. He chairs, by the way, the Public Health and Welfare Committee. He was on the morning show with Richard Cross yesterday. I've never had the pleasure of interviewing Hobb. He's never been in. I'm not sure if there's anything to that. Now, he and old Paul Gallo used to have some epic conversations in bantering back and forth. But the governor picked up on this interview yesterday, by the way, and on his social media he posted. And he's really going after Hobb for misrepresenting the fact that the Greenwood LaFleur Hospital has just announced a significant layoff. And there also is a strong possibility if someone doesn't come in and acquire them, they will shut down the entire operation soon. So it is our understanding that there are discussions going on between the Greenwood LaFleur facility, the hospital there in Greenwood, and also the University of Mississippi Medical Center, that there's some possibility that UMC would take over the facility in the Delta there. But the governor, I'll read you what he said. Same song, different verse, but it is still false. In 2019, it was Democrat Jim Hood. In 2023, it was Democrat Brandon Presley. And in 2026, it's liberal Democrat Hobb Bryan. And those secret meetings, that's what Hobb mentioned on the program yesterday with Richard. Says, yes, I admit it. I've had many meetings with the Department of Health, the Department of Mental Health, the Division of Medicaid, physicians, hospitals, serving 75% of the Medicaid population, the FQHCs, other Republican governors. And believe it or not, I even admit that I had a secret meeting with Senator Bryan and Senator Boyd and Senator Hobson. So, yeah, what's a secret meeting exactly? When the governor is meeting privately with members of the legislature about a critical matter, okay, so the governor met privately to have a discussion privately.
You got to remember, Hobbs not real big on common sense and he's real big on theatrics.
No doubt about that. I mean, this is no big deal. That's appropriate for a governor to conduct themselves in that manner when they're dealing with a complex issue. The president does it as well, right? They meet privately. Get a lot done doing that, do you not? Let's take it out of the public square for a while here and let's see what we can do to work out a deal, work through this issue. What's wrong with that? Man, oh man. Well, I appreciate the governor pointing that out and being transparent. Yeah, I met with all these people, no big deal. But I make it sound like, oh, he's trying to hide it. Don't want anybody to know. You were one of them. You were one of the participants. Golly. Oh, man. And it is true. There are some hospitals, not just in Mississippi, by the way, across the country, that are at risk of closing. Now, they're saying due to Medicaid cuts. I'm not quite buying that. Because, of course, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, it did impose some reforms to Medicaid. But think about it, Rhino. It was, okay, you got to work. And then the liberals come out and say, well, they're all working, so this is crazy. But which is it, guys? Either the work requirements are going to cause people to get kicked off of Medicaid, or everybody's working and therefore we don't need this policy. Which is it?
This is the problem of trying to apply sanity to insanity.
It's precisely that. It's the argument from the anti-school choice people. Well, you really won't have any choice. Oh, my gosh, if they pass choice, they're going to break the system. Well, which is it? Is that not contradictory? Man. So, and then, of course...
It's because the people making these arguments aren't making them based on anything they've spent time thinking about or deliberating or breaking down or analyzing. They're trying to garner an emotional response.
That's totally right.
With emotional language.
So excuse me for applying a little logic and facts and truths to these critical policies. And then the other one is, okay, these asylees, parolees, and refugees, you can't get Medicaid anymore. Well, then maybe you need to go home because you're here under false pretense anyhow. You're really not an asylee, a refugee, or a parolee. But Joe Biden lets you in anyway. And now you want us to pay for it. Jeez. Okay, so, and by the way, you can't game the system by getting the people who receive the Medicaid benefits to help cover the cost of the program so you can pull down more federal money. You see why I lean so heavy into let's just end the federal Medicaid program and send it to the states? I know that would impose a huge financial burden on Mississippi. And I believe the private sector's got to step up and help with that. But it needs to be for those who legitimately need this. And I know this is harsh and may come off as crass, but if you can't afford to have a child, please don't have one. Because if you can't, you know what happens is they get enrolled in Medicaid. Coming right back with the final segment.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Final segment of Middays today. Well, the folks in Maine looks like they are poised to prohibit the construction of new data centers up there. I got to tell you, I am glad and pleased that we have a president that understands this is a matter of national security, of our economic future, and he has said it in the last couple of days. He gets it. He understands that we cannot allow China to obtain and maintain technical superiority in the area of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, all the above. We might as well start lining up in blue pajamas and doing the goose step, saluting the Chinese flag. Literally, that's what would happen. I'm not exaggerating here, by the way. That's their goal, to take us down digitally. Because they know they can't with conventional military assets, and that's certainly been exposed quite a bit with these last two military operations in Venezuela.
It's also why it seems like every time you turn around, there's another report of some Chinese nationals sneaking pathogens into the country.
Yeah, tell the folks about that. That's ridiculous.
It's like the 10th or 11th one in the last year alone, so about one a month.
Really is incredible. But the state of Maine looks like they're about to do it, and it's fine with me. Send them our way. They're totally misguided, totally overblown.
Isn't it Maine where they also ban billboards?
No, I don't know. I didn't know that.
I think they've got some goofy law that bans billboards.
Oh, gosh. So it's a Democrat-controlled state legislature.
No.
They approved a bill freezing construction of new data centers until November 2027. It says that would give them time to assess the risks to the environment and the electric grid. Yeah, do they realize how much can be done by the Chinese, our most ardent foes, in that short period of time, that 2-year period of time? No, I think is the answer to that question. So it bans capacities.
They don't know what a woman was, so I mean.
That is true. The state government's going to create a council to examine the impact. Now, look, I'm fine with any of these projects being scrubbed and analyzed and evaluated for impact, environmental impact, ratepayer impact. I agree. All that makes perfect sense. But why don't they ever see that it's possible to pursue this necessary progress while being good stewards and good fiduciaries as well?
Because they don't actually give a flying rat's rear end about the environmental impact. They just want to be a wrench in the machine.
Because of the power that they derive from it and the sort of distorted, twisted sense of perverse pleasure and authority.
That's why all the climate activists use petroleum-based superglue to superglue their hands to the asphalt, because they don't actually think, they just do based on emotions.
Oh, my gosh. So this is a bill that's headed to Democratic Governor Janet Mills' desk. Says she would freeze it. Now, I don't know how many data centers are seeking the state of Maine as a site. I'm not sure. But I'd say this, here in the state of Mississippi, we have an energy provider. We got 3 that are willing to step up to the plate and provision the necessary capacity and transmission to accommodate this demand, do it in a way that does not place additional cost burden on the typical residential or commercial ratepayer. You dig a foot under the ground, you hit water here in Mississippi. We have plenty of water, and it's grossly overblown. You know this, how much water data centers consume. We use more water flushing our toilets than data centers do. That's actually proven fact.
Yeah, I'm starting to believe that all the people that are against data centers because of water were not paying attention in 3rd grade when they learned the water cycle.
It's true.
Not even like it's a high-minded concept you had to take a special class in college for. You literally learn about the water cycle in elementary school.
That's true. Now, does it make sense maybe not to locate a data center in an area with a short supply of water? Well, sure, because there can be a concentration. I acknowledge that. Okay, so don't do it there. That's pretty simple. And you know as well as I do, there's so much under development in the way of new technologies and methodologies of cooling this IT infrastructure that pretty soon we're not going to need any dang water, is where we're headed towards. They never consider the fact that humans are pretty good at solving human problems if we just get the government the hell out of the way.
If you actually let the problems get solved instead of just being the problem yourself.
That's absolutely true. We're out of here today. Thanks so much for joining us. Back again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.